Summer is officially here, and some of you have been lucky enough to enjoy what festival season has to offer. So today I want to dive into making some of that lovely lo-fi house sound of Maubourg and chaos in the CBD. Let's jump into it. All right, let's dive into it. It may not seem like it. There's quite a lot going on in this page. It looks like it's all overlapping, but this song really is about space. I started off with the drum selection, as you can see in this group here. And we're doing some new things that I don't think I've featured on the channel today, but we'll get to it. I started off with the kick drum. And with these types of genres, it's also all about the sound selection. I wanted to get the right kick sound. It needed to have that kind of boxy room sound, almost like a hip hop kick. So the first kick that I'm using is just this Soundsmith's Befail kick, whatever that stands for. And it was coming in like this. So quite boxy, and I just gave it an EQ here. A little bit higher and tight because I wanted to use the Mali raw kick in the low end. You can see that I'm rounding it off to about 42.5 hertz there. So it's got enough sub there to feel warm, but there's still a little bit of space for our sub bass. And we're getting rid of the highs because obviously it's going to blend with our above kick. We throw those together with utility to put it in mono, and we just EQ out any of the imperfections of the things that occur when we gel those two sounds. Straight after that, I just wanted a hi-hat accent, so it sounded similar to a live drum kit if we were keeping that hi-hat going. So we've just got this little closed jazz hat. I didn't pitch it, but I did warp the beats. Transients, that forward envelope, you've seen me do it a million times with 41 pulled down on the envelope there. Fair bit of high passing going on and just taking off those 10K plus frequencies. And then I'm doubling up on that sound with this kind of double time hi-hat. And there's a fair bit going on to make sure that it doesn't sound like just the same sample time and time again. It's what it sounds like with all of the effects. Now we're going to bypass all the effects, and this is what it really sounds like. The first thing that I did was apply the shifter. And I wanted a little bit of movement there, so it sounded like we were squeezing down on that hi-hat pedal and releasing it. So it's going to create more of a pitched up effect and then more of a bassy effect. So just using the LFO modulator, I've tied that to the fine tune. 20% here and 57%, as you can see there, over a rate of half a bar. That will make it sound like this. Then a little bit of saturation, followed by some EQ to take off any of that harsh, buzzy noise. And then shaper tied to the gain of a utility so that it rises and falls in volume. Then if I turn it back down to the level it was at and couple it with those other elements that I showed you, it sounds like this. So it's very subtle, but it's definitely a nice realistic sounding hi-hat. And then I've just got this classic 909 open hat that we hear in a lot of house music, especially that kind of lo-fi house genre. I wanted to add a sense of realism, so I wanted to find like a nice jazz ride. It's also got a little bit of kick and snare action in there as well, but that only added to the syncopation of the rhythms inside. The original sample was pretty long. So it's kind of this polyrhythmic pattern. And then I just turned it into this. Which sounds really odd, right? It doesn't sound like it's going to fit our beat too much. But once we EQ'd it and tied it to our other hi-hat patterns, we get this. Then I added the 909 ride here, EQ'd with a little bit of echo on mid-side mode, mid-side turned on, and we're filtering those frequencies. So it just seems a little bit wider in the mix. I did initially go for the auto pan, but it was just a little bit too off-putting for this particular beat. Similar to the kicks, I'm doubling up on snare sounds just to again kind of mold that sound a little bit better to what I can hear in my head. So we're just going with a standard lo-fi snare from Splice. But as you can see, I'm adding the medium dark plates and an EQ8. It's taking it away from that dry place and just kind of putting it into a real life room. And then I found this kind of clap noise sound. And I wanted to make sure that that just gave that snare some life, some width, a little bit of texture, some ear candy there. Then I've just got a little offbeat perk, nothing crazy to write home about there. Let's listen to all the drums. So this is actually a trick that I picked up from TikTok of all places. I've always done my parallel compression on a separate track. And then I just realized that you could do it in an audio effect rack, which seems so obvious now. Some of you are probably screaming at your laptops, but I just never thought of it. And I feel like a buffoon now that I'm finally talking about it. So to get this chain, all you want to do is create an audio effect rack. You're going to create 2 chains inside it. One of them I always name dry, and then the other one I call P-comp, parallel compression. These 2 chains allow you to throw different audio effects here that you can run side by side and then control the amount of gain. So all that I've got in my bottom chain, this P-comp chain, is a glue compressor with the attack brought all the way down. The release is brought pretty much all the way down, or you can set it to automatic. The ratio is up to 10. And then I'm bringing the threshold all the way down, the makeup up a little bit, soft clip is on. I'm just taking out some of the lows that I didn't want with the EQ8 there. If we solo that and start to bring down the threshold, you'll see the effect that we get. And we compare that to the dry signal. And then to blend your parallel compression, I normally start with just the dry signal playing, and I start to increase this parallel compression chain until I can kind of start to hear that shine, that glimmer come through. And then I just pause it there. Like I said, I added the EQ8 just to get rid of some of those lows, some of that aggressive bass. All right, so the rest is pretty simple. I started off with this really simple A flat minor chord progression, basically playing 2, maybe 3 chords here. Just a standard analog default device. The shape is the sawtooth, and on the bottom here, I've put the sine, and it sounds like this. It's pretty intense from the get-go, so you want to take that frequency all the way down to sort of like the 2 to 400s. And then from that point, we're pretty close to the sound. You just add a little bit of vibrato and then add the echo. The echo will make it feel a little bit more space-like and add a little bit of width too. With the echo, I like to bring in the filter on mid-side mode. Again, just adds a little bit more width. You can see that with this side, I've added 6% of delay. Again, it's gonna give that kind of Haas effect to your synth. It's almost like a dub delay. Then the chorus. Again, it's gonna give that kind of phase sound. A little bit of reverb. The reverb helps to smooth out that chorus effect as well a little bit. Saturator. And then an EQ to get that really muffled feel. Now to harmonize with that, I actually just went with scalar. You've heard me talk a lot about the decent sampler or the claustrophobic piano. So it's just a little bit brighter. I went with EQ8 to get rid of any lows. Reverb, quite a lot of space with this. Dry wet is up to 64%, so more wet signal than dry. And then a line delay to give it a really, really wide Haas effect. I don't normally go to 20 milliseconds, but that just gives a little twinkle to this sound. Hear it drift off into the distance? Super lovely. So let's turn that back down, play those together. I didn't want it up much more than that. And then finally, I wanted to add just a choir sample. I was going to go for splice or maybe a more realistic instrument, but it's going to be so low in the mix. It's going to be that lo-fi sound. I may as well just keep on the trend that I've been going on with these melodic instruments and keep it completely stock and in the box. So I just went with this synthetic choir strings instrument. Just playing 2 of the 3 chords there, just accenting that on and off beat. Drenching it in reverb, saturator, EQ8, and a little bit of a line delay. Let's set that back to its original level and play all 3 together. As you can see here, just EQing that group sound a little bit, taking out some of the muddy lows and adding a little bit of brightness around the 2K mark there. So it's really important for me to get down that jazzy sound. We've got jazzy chords, but what are the jazzy instruments? I wanted to go with an upright bass and then build in a trumpet as well. So let's dive into it. But first, let me tell you about something. I'm one of those people who at a festival can't help but get their phone out and Shazam the sky and just pray that the algorithmic gods will deliver the artist and track name to me. And that's why our sponsor today, DistroKid, is my personal hero. When I'm uploading my music, I make sure to tick the box that says Discovery Pack at the bottom. It ensures that my music will be discoverable through iPhone, Siri, Shazam, and other tools. And so there's no headache in future. They have things like Store Maximizer, which will ensure that your music is uploaded to other streaming services as they become available, and they'll automatically normalize your music so that it's at the correct decibels or LUFS for Spotify and other social medias. I truly am happier uploading my music with DistroKid, so if you want to get 7% off your first year, use the link in the description below. Okay, so I immediately went for the upright bass in Ableton. It's quite a dry sound, but it's going to be quite low in the mix, so it didn't matter too much about the quality of the sound. Again, it's got that kind of syncopated on-beat, off-beat feel to the rhythms that are going on. So EQ8, really harsh. Wanted to get rid of this harmonic that I didn't like there. And I've got this warm up lows preset from the saturator and then putting it into mono. Now to build onto that bass and give it more of a sub bass tone and feel more like a DI'd upright bass, I just built in the basic sub sine, EQ'd it really harshly, taking off any of the highs where they occur in the upright bass. And again, just putting it into mono there. The only note that's different is this C here. On the upright bass, I play up, and on the sine, I play down an octave, and that's just to emphasize that bass tone a little bit because it was a little bit thin with the upright counterpart. So these two together sound like this. Now I should mention that if this was a different type of recording, I probably would add the spatial room preset and EQ that reverb a little bit just to make it sit in a nicer kind of space, give it some reflection there. However, in this particular recording, it just kind of muddied up the mix and it made the bass sound really muffled. So, but it's food for thought in case you're creating a different kind of recording at home. Then just a little bit of piano, playing 2 chords, really high up in the octaves. Can't really hear it too much in the mix, but again, it's just a little twinkle. We're really trying to color this palette. And then finally, I'm adding this trumpet sample. Let me show you what the trumpet sounded like originally. And here's what mine sounds like. So what I did, and what I would suggest you do as well, is get a piano and play out the melody that you would like it to sound like, and then cut up the different parts of that trumpet playing. As you can see here, the first part of the trumpet is -15 semitones, then -11, -9, and then finally -5. And the second part of the trumpet sounds different again. I really wanted to cut this up and make it sound like my own melody. And then I'm just doing an octave jump on the trumpet underneath, so it cuts through the mix a little bit better. Finally, we have some noise, and I've made sure that that noise is rhythmical also, so it kind of has a vinyl skipping sound to the whole track. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of is making sure that the trumpet has a slight pitch bend in some places. So I'm just clicking on that clip, choosing envelopes, clip, and then transposition. You can see here that I start just slightly above the note and then pitch it down towards the end of the note, and that gives it this really nice attention to detail. It just makes it a little bit more humanistic rather than it being a straight note. Let's have a recap of this whole beat. So a fun recommendation from one of the patrons there, and I hope you enjoyed this content too. As always, let me know what you want to see in future content. You can download this project and the stems and samples over at the Patreon. And as always, I thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.